Samsung is working on a tri-foldable phone that looks super cool, but there are a few reasons why you probably won't buy it. The early reactions to Nothing's newest flagship phone are pretty negative, which is going to put the company in a very rough spot. And the Pixel 6a just got an update that nerfs the battery to prevent it from overheating and, well, bursting into flames. I'm C. Scott Brown, and it's time for a quick roundup of the biggest tech news that you need to know about. Our first story today centers on a new tri-foldable phone coming from Samsung. When I say tri-fold, what I mean is that it has 3 panels instead of 2. Imagine that a Galaxy Z Fold device opens like a book. Well, a tri-fold would open like a restaurant menu. Okay, so there's a bit of history here that we need to go over. Earlier this year at Mobile World Congress, we saw early prototypes of what Samsung then called Flex G technology. The prototype is for a small tablet or large smartphone? I don't know, you be the judge there. The device folds over twice, so it has 3 panels. Notably, this design differs from the Huawei Mate XT, which is also a tri-folding device. The way the Huawei phone folds leaves some of the foldable screen exposed, which could be a problem for durability. But Samsung's tri-fold design protects the foldable display by having the 2 outer panels fold over one another. Anyway, when we saw this prototype at Mobile World Congress, the rumor was that this device could be launched as early as 2026 in very select markets. Well, fast forward to this week, and we spotted this visual representation of a tri-folding device in the latest beta for One UI 8. This led us to think that this phone could be coming out much sooner than originally thought. As it turns out, we were right. Shortly after we found this design in One UI 8, we saw an article in a South Korean publication called The Bell that allegedly outlined Samsung's plans. According to The Bell, the tri-folding phone will likely launch as the Samsung Galaxy G Fold and likely land before the end of 2025. So, what kind of specs can we expect from this phone? Rumors suggest it will come with the Snapdragon 8 Elite processor under the hood. Now, that's the best Android processor you can get right now, but keep in mind that the sequel to that chip will likely have launched by the time this phone comes out, so it will technically be a generation behind. Obviously, the Snapdragon 8 Elite will still be an amazing processor, so that's not too big of a deal. For cameras, we're expecting a very similar setup to the one we see on Samsung's latest Galaxy Z Fold devices. Remember that next week, Samsung will launch the Galaxy Z Fold 7, and we're expecting it to come with some notable camera upgrades, including a 200 megapixel primary sensor, similar to what we see on the Galaxy S25 Ultra and the Galaxy S25 Edge. It's possible the Galaxy G Fold could have the same setup. Now, before you get your hopes up and start changing your plans from buying the Galaxy Z Fold 7 to buying the Galaxy G Fold, there are a few bits of bad news here. The first is that Samsung is likely only going to produce a very limited number of units. Second, those units will probably only come out in select countries, notably China and South Korea. Third, and most upsetting, is that early pricing estimates put the Galaxy G Fold at nearly $3,000. Ugh, that is a lot of money for a first-gen device. We're really excited about the Galaxy G Fold, but time will tell if it sees wide consumer adoption or not. We'll be on the lookout for more info related to its release. There is a possibility that we could get a tease of it next week during the Galaxy Unpacked event, but who knows? Our next story centers on the Nothing Phone 3, which just launched on Tuesday. This is only the second premium level phone Nothing has launched and has been referred to by the company itself as its first true flagship. Now that the launch is completed and we know pretty much everything there is to know, how are tech fans reacting? Well, it could be a lot better, that's for sure.
You're goddamn right.
Let's start with a poll we ran at AndroidAuthority.com. In it, we asked if the Nothing Phone 3 is worth the $799 asking price. Of the 3 possible answers, the one with the most votes is no, the price doesn't match the compromises. And when I say most votes, I mean over 50% of the total votes. That's not good news for Nothing. So, what are people so upset about? The criticisms we've seen the most center on 3 things: the processor, the fingerprint scanner, and the build quality. Let's start with the processor. Inside the Nothing Phone 3 is the Snapdragon 8S Gen 4. Now, this is the worst named processor ever, but it is actually really good. Think of it as being close to the performance of the Snapdragon 8 Gen 3, which is the one you'll find in most Galaxy S24 devices. So it's flagship level, but not 2025 flagship level. People seem to be upset about a phone costing $800 and not coming with the latest and greatest chip inside. For the record, the Poco F7 just launched earlier in June, and it is the same chip as the Nothing Phone 3, and the Poco model is literally half the price. So if all you care about is having a phone with the same processing power, why spend $800? Another significant compromise is the fingerprint sensor. There are generally two types of in-display fingerprint sensors in Android phones. Optical, which uses light waves to scan your finger, and ultrasonic, which uses sound waves. In almost all cases, ultrasonic readers are superior to optical readers, given that they are faster, more accurate, and don't blind you when you unlock your phone in a dark room.
I'm blind!
This is why ultrasonic readers appear on high-end phones like the Galaxy S25, Pixel 9, and OnePlus 13. But the Nothing Phone 3, which, once again, costs the same as those phones, has an optical sensor. So yeah, people are pretty upset about that. And the third most popular complaint about the Nothing Phone 3 is the build. On the back of the phone, you'll find Gorilla Glass Victus, which is not the best smartphone glass on the market, but pretty up there. On the front of the phone, though, is Gorilla Glass 7i, which is a much lower end product than even Victus. It's weird that Nothing decided the back of the phone should have better glass than the front, don't you think? There are other compromises too. The sensor underneath the telephoto camera is actually smaller than the one we saw on the Nothing 3A Pro, which costs half as much as the Nothing Phone 3. You can't record 4K video at 120 frames per second. The display is AMOLED, but not LTPO, so its adaptive refresh rate is limited. And to top it all off, Nothing got rid of the glyph lights, one of the most distinctive features of any Nothing phone. In place of the lights, we have a dot matrix display, which seems to be even more gimmicky than the lights were. At least the lights had a certain character to them, whereas this just seems tacked on. Anyway, Nothing has a big problem on its hands here. Nothing phones have proven to be successful in the budget sector of emerging markets, meaning phones that are around $400 or less. But Nothing doesn't want to be trapped there. It wants to play with the big dogs in the premium sector. Given the negative response to this first true flagship, it has a pretty big upward battle ahead of it. If you want to learn more about the Nothing Phone 3, check out this video we made going hands-on with it, and read my article about it in the link in the description. Okay, I have one more quick story for you. Google has had a big problem recently, which is that phones within its A series have been overheating batteries. In some cases, these batteries have set themselves on fire. You can see in these photos here submitted by an Android Authority reader that when that happens, it can be pretty insane. As far as we know, this problem has been most prevalent with the Pixel 4a and the Pixel 6a. A while ago, Google issued a mandatory battery update for the Pixel 4a, which limited its charging capabilities. Google wouldn't confirm it, but it's very clear that the purpose of this is to prevent the battery from overheating. Well, this week, Google pushed out another mandatory battery update, this time for the Pixel 6a. Interestingly, Google is taking a drastic step here to prevent people from skipping this update. As first spotted by our friends over at Droid Life, Google has completely removed all previous Pixel 6a software updates from its official archive. So, if for whatever reason you wanted to roll back to a previous update that doesn't include the nerfing of battery charging, it will be very difficult to do so. The good news here is that Google is offering some people battery replacements for free. Some folks might even have the option for a financial payout if they simply want to get a new phone. Either way, we strongly recommend that any Pixel 6a owners watching this follow Google's instructions by visiting the article linked in the description. You definitely do not want to wake up to a house fire caused by your smartphone. Trust me on that one.
Hey, Alex.
That's it for this roundup. If you want to dive deeper into these stories, be sure to check all the links down below. Remember to like and subscribe so you'll be notified as soon as the next roundup goes live. See you all soon.